On the far side of Main Street, with late summer sun streaming through dusty glass, Eli Parker pressed his name awkward and looping onto a crumpled deed. Townsfolk standing outside the courthouse exchanged smirks and muttered wagers beneath their breath. "He'll never see a ripe apple, not on that dirt," someone laughed, while another shook his head, certain the boy's savings would vanish into the deadwood. Even shopkeepers stepped out to watch as Eli's mother handed him a battered lunch tin and squeezed his shoulder, worry half hidden in her eyes. Eli paid no mind to the humor or pity. He made his way through rustling weeds and rows of twisted, hollowed trees, each step slow but determined. The orchard looked like it belonged to ghosts, branches broken, fruit shriveled, the grass patchy and yellow. Yet in the hush of late afternoon, Eli's face held a stubborn spark, a kid's quiet fire too easily misjudged by grown-ups. All around him, their voices echoed with the certainty he would fail. But Eli walked the dying ground with a secret plan, his eyes already reading what others had given up on, and wondering what roots might answer if someone finally listened. The village of Meadowbrook clung to the edges of a long valley, its houses faded to silvers and ghosts of yellow, barns leaning with memories and the weight of too many dry seasons. The main street was 2 blocks of stubbornness, an old grocery store with hand-painted signs, feed shop piled with dusty sacks, a cafe that survived mostly on habit, and windows so patched with tape and time they barely caught the sun. Farm trucks rolled slower each year, brakes squealing, their cargo lighter. Out across the fields, corn grew thin and short, beans barely covering cracked ground, and the air hung with dust that settled on everything. At the very edge of town, Eli's orchard sprawled like a knot of forgotten stories, wild rose canes tangling with rusted wire, gnarled apple and pear trees hunched together as if ashamed. Weeds shouldered up through every row, grasshoppers clicking between the brambles. Half the trees looked hollow or broken by storms, their bark flaked away, roots exposed. Birds nested in fallen limbs, and rabbits scurried through the tangles. But no farmer in years had bothered to save a single fruit from the rot. For most in Meadowbrook, the orchard was a cautionary tale. One more place, time and luck had quietly shut the door. At 12, Eli Parker was small for his age, skinny and sun-browned, hair forever sticking up at odd angles, and glasses perpetually slipping down his nose as he crouched in the tall orchard grass. He'd been raised mostly by his mother, a school secretary who wore tired eyes and gentle hands after rain and illness took his father 6 years before. While most boys in Meadowbrook battled each other on makeshift ball diamonds or raced bikes down gravel, Eli could most often be found in the library corner with a stack of battered farm manuals or cross-legged by the creek reading about soil, pruning, and bee paths from decades-old bulletins. He noticed things nobody else did, the way ants tunneled under fallen apples, patches of clover sprouting in the driest shade, the subtle change when a breeze stirred the trees before a storm. He could map every trail and hollow in the abandoned orchard, tracing its lines since he was a toddler sneaking away behind his mother's errands. More often than not, his best conversations happened with Mr. Lowry, the orchard's last caretaker, now retired and half-crippled, or with his mother during late dinners, when she'd encourage him to dream even if he failed. Meadowbrook's boys teased Eli, and adults spoke about him with a mix of pride and doubt. Book-smart, but odd, they'd say, as if patience and carefulness weren't useful in a place that long ago stopped believing in miracles. Yet Eli's resolve deepened with every season of small failures and secret hope. To him, the orchard wasn't just a jumble of dead trees and lost cause. It was a challenge, a puzzle, and maybe if he listened closely enough, a chance to prove that even an ordinary kid could coax something amazing from the land everyone else had written off. By midsummer, the orchard's challenges became impossible to ignore. The oldest apple trees leaned like old men dozing, leaves spotty and bark crumbling at the base root rot, so rampant it seemed even the ants had moved on. Aphids and tent caterpillars gnawed at shoots, and every week brought some new sign of trouble. Split limbs, browned fruit, woodpecker holes. Meadows behind the rows sizzled under relentless drought, and Eli's buckets brought back more dust than water. Neighbors, passing on errands, gave Eli's mother long, sympathetic glances, murmuring how she'd let the boy throw away good money on heartbreak. At the summer picnic, Mr. Thatcher, a town elder, patted Eli's shoulder and said, "Sometimes land is just done giving, son." Some older boys, half jealous and half mocking, trampled new rows by accident or scattered pebbles in water tanks. Each day's disappointment nipped at the edges of Eli's stubborn patience. Alone under the branches at dusk, watching the orchard lose another small battle to disease or heat, he wondered whether everyone was right, and if he'd really paid his savings for a patch of ghosts no grown man could tame. Hope made Eli try everything. He built compost piles out of grass, straw, and old compost bags the heat cooked in the sun, but rain rotted the mix into a smelly tangle that drew fruit flies, not worms. He redug furrows, spent days wrestling salvage drip hoses and half-fixed sprinklers. Nothing held water, and new saplings wilted before their roots could grab hold. His plan to hire a pair of local kids to clear brambles barely lasted. One never showed. The other left after a snake slithered past a log. Eli worked alone, sweat burning in his eyes, hands blistered. Evenings stretched dark and silent. Some nights, a raccoon or deer raided his feeble crop, leaving muddy tracks in smashed rows of peas and the few new apple shoots he'd sheltered with buckets. At school and in the store, the jabs got louder, adults with weary humor and kids with sharper words. "Guess we'll plant a playground in the orchard next," one boy jeered. There were moments Eli wanted to give up. A late windstorm snapped the top off his one best pear tree, and he found himself crying hidden in tall grass while thunder rolled off in the distance. But every defeat inspired new notes, diagrams of what failed, dates of unusual insect blooms, sketches of wildflowers in shady corners. He read everything he could find about permaculture, about rootstock, about bees and sheep and fungal mulch. Through tears and tiredness, his notebook slowly filled with quiet experiments, the lessons of a long, lonely season. No one saw that in the dying trees. Eli was starting to imagine something no one had ever tried before. Fall came early, golden afternoons flush with regret. But in the middle orchard row, Eli spotted a small but distinct difference: a patch of twigs, once brown, now crowned with white blossoms and buzzing bees. It was his mad experiment. He had grafted cuttings from a wild, ancient tree, one his old neighbor claimed survived the '60s drought, onto the healthiest old root. Around the roots, he'd let sheep from Mr. Lowry's flock graze down the weeds and fertilize. He'd also tacked together ragged bee hotels from drilled fence timber, and by luck or faith, wild mason bees had taken up residence. Where he'd planted wild clover, the ground kept cool and springy even as the surrounding grass crisped. That week, under the blossoms, Eli found his first fruit: small apples, spotted but bright with promise. Mrs. Thompson from next door noticed their scent and smiled. "That looks like something worth hoping for," she said, then pressed 2 empty baskets into his hands. The orchard, after months of mocking, sparked genuine curiosity for the first time. Eli hurried back to his notebook, heart racing. If he could coax blossoms here, perhaps the whole forgotten grove could still be coaxed to life. Eli's persistence and oddball methods worked slow magic. Over winter and into spring, he doubled down on his mix of tradition and invention: grafting, soil layering, guiding sheep to graze in rotating rows so no patch would go barren. He broke apart rotted logs, feeding the ground just as old journals suggested. He planted strips of wildflowers between rose poppies, vetch, and marigolds to welcome back the pollinators. Homemade bee houses lined the posts, some with straws and hollowed reeds, others with clay chambers. With every small repair in the old irrigation network and every burlap sack he laid to insulate roots, the ground responded. The orchard's color shifted, no longer drab browns, but deep new greens, and by mid-May, every walk revealed clusters of tough, flower-crowned branches. The windbreaks Eli built from willow saplings sheltered delicate buds, and a late frost rolled over the land with less bite than before. Spare apple and pear trees filled with bee hum. Clusters swelled where there'd been no fruit for years. The first week of harvest, Eli cautiously picked the earliest pears sweet, gold-flecked, their flavor somewhere between sunshine and honey. As word spread, villagers wandered in for a look and stayed for a taste. By the second picking, everyone wanted a share. Old men recalling the orchard's better days, new families with picnic blankets, kids clamoring for the apples the kid grew. Baskets piled up, the yield surpassing Eli's hopes and filling his mother's kitchen with the scent of warm fruit and plans for sauce, cider, and pie. A local chef asked for crates, and a farm co-op sent the county's crop expert with clipboard and questions. Doubters from the feed store wandered over in work boots, welcomed by Eli and his sincere explanations. The boy who once drew eye rolls was now quoted in town, his methods studied, and his patience praised. The market revived on weekends. People left with fruit in arm and young saplings dressed in burlap, eager to revive backyard orchards. Eli's orchard, a patchwork of old wisdom and new ideas, no longer carried the weight of everyone's doubt. His harvest proved bigger than one family's success. It restored the community's pride and appetite for hard work. In every apple handed across the fence and every wildflower buzzing with bees, Meadowbrook found a new reason to hope. When the harvest festival rolled around, the orchard was the talk of the county. School children arrived in wagon loads to pick fruit and listen as Eli patiently described windbreak rows, bee houses, and the woven magic of old and new. Families camped under the apple trees, tables loaded with pies, cider, and brimming baskets. Local musicians played in the shade, and Eli's mother, radiant, welcomed friends and strangers as if every blossom were a second chance. That season, other families dusted off old backyards and abandoned groves, inspired by what a single kid's determination could do. The most skeptical townsfolk stopped Eli in the street to shake his hand or ask about cuttings. Even his earlier rivals joined in, helping mend fences, trade tips, and share seedling starts. The village, so long stuck in survival and suspicion, rediscovered togetherness, pride, and the sweetness of reviving old ground. Eli's story became more than a local legend. It proved that youth isn't a flaw but can be the strength a weary place needs. The lesson echoed after the last apple fell. Never discount the quietly persistent, whatever their age or odd ideas. Fresh eyes and an open heart can redeem generations of disappointment, and sometimes the smallest investment in hope yields the greatest abundance for all. Have you ever seen a kid, newcomer or outsider, prove everyone wrong or made something thrive where others saw nothing but waste? Share your story below or tell us about the person who revived your field, family, or hometown. Your example may inspire a new harvest somewhere else. If Eli's journey reminded you of the power in every overlooked dreamer, subscribe for more true rural stories and bring your friends into our circle of hope and possibility. From dusty orchards to backyard plots, it often takes one brave heart to start a change that brings everyone together.